Oh, we're live. We're
All right,
live
then.
and welcome. It's Toffee Blues Late Night Live with Forrest and Quinn. I'm not just reading this banner, but here we are. We're back for week 2. We have a lot less games to talk about or try to, just run through, and a lot more Tim Howard to talk about because goodness me, what a week Tim Howard has had. Newly inducted into the National Soccer Hall of Fame. For you Brits who might be watching, what that is, it's like a big group of people that get together and they're just really good at soccer, and they did great things for U.S. soccer. And yeah, so Quinn, how have you been? How was your week?
Man, week was long. I feel like week was long. I'm tired. Feels like way later in this week than Tuesday, which I don't know if that's good or bad. Probably more on the bad side. But yeah, overall, good week. My youngest sister graduated from college, so it made me feel old. I mean, yeah,
Awesome.
so that's how most of my
Wow.
week was circled around. Yeah,
Yeah.
what have you been up to this week, Forrest?
Well, gosh, I had COVID Friday and Saturday, which I mean, I guess with new COVID guidelines, I only had to quarantine for one day as far as symptoms went. Yeah, I got diagnosed on Friday, missed work Friday, went to work on Saturday for a few hours to make some things, and then I left and just slept the whole day. And then yeah, I guess I've been much better the past couple days. It's hard to sit here and say this and feel like I'm going to be taken seriously in the fact of how I dealt with having COVID, but I have to work, and unfortunately, my job does not offer great sick pay. But we're not here to talk about our jobs. We're not here to talk about COVID. I'm much better now. It was a definite struggle for a couple of days, but much better now. Um,
We're glad you're
yeah,
better. Glad you're better.
thank you, thank you. So most of what we're going to talk about today is going to be about Tim Howard, just about what he did for Everton, who he's been to us, um, and really to U.S. soccer and U.S. Evertonians as a whole. But we also want to touch on Luton 1, Everton 1, which was, I don't want to say it was a bore fest, but I kind of like, I don't know. Like, I didn't expect much more than the 1-1.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'd say it was. I didn't think it was going to be as boring as the previous match. Thought that one would be more boring, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like ridiculously exciting until, yeah, Jared Branthwaite at the end of the game is like seething because he's blocking shots in injury time. But yeah, it wasn't extremely exciting. I, like many others, I think laughed at the fact that it's a Friday night kickoff and what the league thought it would be and then what it's not.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I say it was a bore fest. By like the last like 10 minutes of the game, I was like standing up right next to the TV watching like this, like, oh, can we just score the winner? Like, can we please just score the winner now? I do not want to let them score the winner because I cannot fathom getting beat by Luton 3 times in a season. And I just wanted something a little more to celebrate. Maybe I just got greedy. I don't know. I'm not upset with myself
Sure.
about it. I just, it was one of those games where we were safe. If that game had something riding on it, maybe we're going to try a little bit harder and push a little bit more forward.
Mm-hmm.
But you could tell, towards the 80th minute, the players were like, well, gosh, we've got the 1-1 draw. Let's just try to keep it at that. If there's a real clear cut open chance that we can make happen, we'll make it happen. And, you had Kermity. I'll say his name right one day. He came on. He had a couple of nice, really nice, good touches, and he's kind of shown that
Yeah.
in a couple of games now. It seems like he's finally found a little bit of confidence, a little bit of rhythm. I know he's really only had these 5 to 10 minute cameos throughout the season, but seeing him come in and have some nice touches and try to find some interplay with other players was really really exciting. And for a player who has been on the peripheral of our striking situation all season, it was just good to see him get the opportunity to come out and play with a little less burden on his shoulders.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think when we scored our first, when we scored the only one we scored, I thought, well, this is good. We scored first. We're not going to be just chasing the game for the sake of a game that doesn't mean too much to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt somewhat comfortable with the thought of, man, maybe we'll concede one, but I don't think we'll concede more than one. I think it will. And then, yeah, they scored shortly after that. And I just thought, this is how it's going to end. Luton's going to push, but I don't think they'll end up finishing. And yeah, similarly, love seeing Trinity up front. As many people have said in post-match like analysis and looking forward, I would love to see him up top with Dom for the next match. Just them playing alongside each other. Would love to see what that looks like. He is more, I think like Dominic than he is Beto, and would just love, but slightly different. But still, would love to see the two of them actually get more than 20 minutes on the field together.
Yeah.
And like you said, like you can see the confidence in him of more of the thought of I belong, and I'm not trying to, like the anxious, I'm young, seeing the field for the first time, don't want to make a mistake, like fear-based play, but starting to find his footing. So that excites me.
It's that imposter syndrome that comes along with breaking into a team in a Premier League team. I would love to see Trinity and Dom play. Yusuf, I'm just going to call him Yusuf, and Dom play, because I think he could be a really good foil for Dom in terms of having a good touch and finding some interplay. And I think a game against an already relegated Sheffield United is a really good opportunity for him to be able to come in and do that and experiment for Deitch, whether or not it happens, regardless. So Luton won, Everton won. It was great to see Branthwaite celebrate those blocks at the end and celebrate getting another point for the Toffees. It's part of the anxiety I had with that game was the fact that this little thread of administration is still hanging over top of us, and it's like, well, gosh, are we still going to need these points? Like, should we be trying to go for the win here a bit, because who knows what might happen if the league decides to dock us more points come the last week of the season. Not really something you want to think about, but I can't help but bring it up because that's like the doom and gloom part of me. That's like, oh, something really bad can happen here.
Well, man, along those lines, I didn't bring this up to you before the show, but I get this. This is on the topic of administration and 777 and all the wonderful news that continues to come out for all of us Evertonians. But I get this daily news email every morning. It's just kind of like bullets. It's called the Daily Brew or Morning Brew. I don't know. Morning Brew, Daily Brew, something like that. They don't pay me to say that.
You're the one who reads it every day.
I am. But the very first headline, a Miami firm wanted to buy Everton. It got a massive scandal instead, which I have read this email every day. They send one every morning for years. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Everton is on this thread. Like, this is so bad. Like
worlds colliding.
All these people that read this for stocks, like political news, for like natural disasters, what's going on in the world. Like the very first story this morning was on Everton Football Club and 777. And I'm like, well, that's not how I wanted the world to know about Everton Football Club for those who don't.
And it's like, it follows a theme of like kind of really weird, bad things happening around Everton in general. Like, I remember a couple weeks ago, there was like a picture of some guys who committed like a robbery in some random country. And one of them had an Everton top on. Like it's just stuff like that happens all the time, where it's just randomly a random way for Everton's name to get out there, and it's usually just not in a good way, other than like Justin Bieber, wearing.
I was thinking that when you just said that, I immediately thought of the picture of Justin Bieber wearing an Everton top.
That's like Everton folklore. That's like bedrock for Evertonians. Justin Bieber in an Everton top. Well, enough about Luton and Everton. We're not going to talk about Everton and Sheffield United because that's a real dead rubber game. And I just expect us to come out and win 8-0. I'd love to see it. Love to see us just score a bunch of goals and have a nice little lap of Goodison. What we're really here to talk about today is a man. We're here to talk about a man. His name
is
Tim Howard. Timothy Howard. I don't know his middle name. I think it's actually right here. Timothy. Nope, just Tim Howard. Born in New Brunswick, New Jersey, 1979. He's an old man now. 6'3", father of two. I'm reading off a script here. Tim Howard is somebody that for sure for me, brought Everton very quickly to my heart. And I think I told this in the last show, but it started with that FA Cup semifinal in 2009. His heroics, seeing the fans celebrate, seeing that there's a great shot of him walking towards the fans, and he's just arms in the air, elated, got his hands up, just his gloves up, and it's just that shot right there. I was like, man, that's Everton. That's my club right there. But yeah, National Soccer Hall of Fame inductee, and just a real, true blue Evertonian.
Yes, I similarly love the man. Huge fan of Tim Howard. I know that a lot of Americans hang their hat on Clint Dempsey or Landon Donovan, but maybe it's rooted in the fact that he was with Everton for so long and he's a blue. But man, Tim Howard is like the U.S. men's national team player that I think of when I think of like, yeah, who if someone to be like, who's your favorite player who's ever played for our national team? Tim Howard is the name. And I think he comes to mind, but he's second in people's mind to either Clint or Landon, and definitely not second to either of them in my mind. Just love him. Right. Loved him at Everton. And yeah, that semi-final, I was listening to. It's all good. You're sick. I mean, you're not sick for those. You're not sick. Getting over being sick.
I swallowed my tea wrong. It's not even being sick.
Hey, fair.
Yeah. Continue, please.
Yeah, I was watching. I don't know if I was watching an interview of his or listening to his book. I listened to his book in the last 3 days. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Look at me.
Love it.
But he said in one of those things, it was like the culmination. Him winning that game was the culmination of it being the right decision to leave Manchester United and sign for Everton, which is just like, yeah. And he called his like goalkeeping coach, who's been like, he mentioned him in his speech this weekend at the Hall of Fame induction, called him and said like, or texted him with 4 words of like, slayed the dragon, like when they won that game and he beat, they beat Manchester United. It just, yeah, that it gives me chills. Every time I watch the clips from that over, I get chills. Where Tim Howard goes running and the shot of everyone like pulling his jersey and just like celebrating with like, yeah, it is just a special moment. I mean, the whole thing is a special moment, but watching Tim Howard make those saves against his former club, and us beat them in the FA Cup semifinal at Wembley was just like a great moment of falling in love with the club and him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really like when you sit here and I want to touch on kind of the overall feeling that a lot of Evertonians have about Tim Howard. I think, unfortunately, quite a few Blues feel that Tim's legacy is a bit tarnished with us. That probably comes down to the fact that he maybe stayed at the club 1 season too long, but it's on the club to sign a replacement. If they don't sign that and think he's good enough, then that's on the coaching staff. You can't really blame the goalkeeper or blame the player for that. Man, something stuck in my throat. But what like is really special about Tim Howard is for us as Americans watching soccer, being around it, playing a sport that a lot of Americans end up playing at some point in their life, just because it's such an easy youth sport to get together. You don't need a crazy amount of equipment. And you just really need a piece of grass and some lines, and you can kind of go from there. But it's just such a approachable youth sport that a lot of people just don't stick with, because when you look at the way our big sports leagues are lined up, you look at American football, you look at basketball, even, baseball and hockey, these are where people gravitate because that's where the money is. That's where broadcasts are focused on. That's where sports media is focused on. When you look at ESPN's top 10, you're seeing maybe one clip of a soccer goal or something, and then everything else it's like somebody stealing a home run. It's somebody dunking all over somebody and posterizing them. It's a crazy one-handed catch, for a touchdown. It's these real American sports plays. And so to see an American go to the highest level of soccer and succeed and excel for well over a decade at one club is so special. And when that club is yours, it's just it's something that is really hard to put into words because it seems so insignificant at the end of the day. Oh, it's just one of my countrymen playing for the club I support. But yeah, that's one of my countrymen, and from a country where soccer is not as big as it should be. It's obviously grown quite a lot since Tim Howard left Everton, but it's not as big as it should or could be. And yet this man is driving. He's a driving force to make that sport bigger, to make it more prevalent, and to bring fans to Everton. Like it's just it's a really special feeling to see that. And I've been very lucky to have been able to meet Tim Howard. I was very brief. It was just, players parade before a match. I was beardless and mustacheless, little 22-year-old. I don't even know if I was 22-year-old. And I'm just like, hi, Tim. Yeah, just a baby. Honestly, if I look back at that picture, I kind of cringed. But just talking to him and, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. And he's just, really just excited and happy that there's Americans coming over who are Evertonians and seeing Everton play because of him. I know, I don't know him personally. I haven't talked with him outside of just that little interaction that I had, but I know that that's got to be a special feeling to know that you're bringing people to the club that you love, the club that's in your heart, the club that's your family, that you support, and you're bringing them in just by playing and performing for that club. It's important. It's so important.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you just said. It's just different, especially like you said in that. Actually, in his book, he talks about how America's like the last non-soccer nation, non-football nation, and how it took just about until that World Cup game against Belgium for there to be momentum, really, in watching the sport. And so even obviously that was years after he signed for Everton. And so, watching it it's not cool. It's not cool to be a soccer player in America. Like you said about it being a kid's game, it's like the game that parents will put their kids in when they're young because it helps them with their footwork for something like football or basketball. And so, it's not a man's game. It's a kid's game, to a lot of people in America. And he is one of those people that I think really started to change the course of the sport and how it's viewed here in America. And like you said, it's really special to watch that from the point of view of being an Evertonian and watching him week in and week out for a club versus just every 4 years when Americans who couldn't give a rip about the sport turned it on to watch them play a few World Cup games and then turn it off for another 4 years, watching him week in and week out for the club that you love, that he loves, and that so many people love. Yeah, it's special.
Yeah, and it's interesting you brought up that point about soccer not being the cool sport to play in America. I think that's changed a lot these days. I think you definitely see there's a lot more media around it. There's a lot more attention. Things like MLS and women's soccer too are all really getting a lot more attention these days. But what I remember really specifically from growing up and being somebody who played soccer was that you really kind of got looked down as like you're this little lightweight nothing. And there was a term that was always used that is pretty slurish. That's not a true slur, but grass fairies was what you would always have somebody call you. And I don't know if you experienced that, Quinn. Maybe it's different being a woman playing soccer, but as a man playing soccer growing up, you were seen as like a lightweight. You were seen as somebody who couldn't make it in American football, who couldn't make it in basketball, who couldn't make it in these, big, rough and tough man sports. And this concept of a sport where you need to be, being smaller and agile is more of a, is better than being, 6'5", 270 pounds. What you can do with the ball at your feet, which was another totally different thing for a lot of people because it's the only sport, besides like dodgeball. Not dodgeball, kickball. Dodgeball. Where you're playing with your feet. People just didn't grasp the concept of that. And I think, that's coming from their parents thinking one way and talking about things a certain way. It's coming from how the media portrays soccer back then, where it's like, well, these guys are just falling over the second they get touched.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's just rife in like every sport now, especially in like the NBA. These guys are just whining and complaining about everything, every little touch, which is, it's just frustrating. In any sport, it's frustrating to have people not understand the nuances of the sport and then look at these players and the people who play the sport like they are weak. It's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It's a context thing. But what Tim Howard has done for the sport in America has been really, really special. And it means so much more when it's because he played for Everton, because he performed for Everton. To hear him in that interview, the big interview, the one that I know you're talking about, because that's the one where he mentioned that the idea that this is the moment where he beat Manchester United in the FA Cup semifinal. That was the moment where he was like, yeah, I made the right decision. Like he even said, like, yeah, I knew I made the right decision before, but that was the moment where all doubts are gone. This is where I have always belonged and where I'm always going to belong. It's just, we're going to keep repeating ourselves saying it's very important, but it is very important. It's so important to have that representation. It's so important. Obviously there are no Americans in the team now. And it's not like we're really looking at any, but at the end of the day, like to be able to look back and have that, to look back at even, Landon Donovan and Ryan McBride and Joe Max Moore and Preki back in the 90s, to have, these other American representatives of Everton. It gives you when you're talking with other people who might not have a team yet, or other people who are not really, into the sport, be like, well, look, like if you want a team to support, I've got this great team. They finish 16th every year. They're going to make your hair fall out. They've got crazy financial issues, but hey, we had some Americans play for us, and it's not Fulham. It's
not Fulham. That's a good when you're pitching Everton to people. You see all those things, and it's not Fulham. Good disclaimer.
To be fair, the issue with a Fulham is that they're a London club, and London clubs have the glitz and glamour, unfortunately, because it's the glitz and glamour of London. But yeah, so there are some specific moments from Tim Howard that I think Quinn is very fond of. I'm not great with remembering saves from goalkeepers. I'm much more of an outfield kind of guy in terms of remembering. But so I couldn't. The only specific save I can remember of Tim Howard's is that one against Southampton that's been played over and over, where he scoops the ball, he reaches back and scoops it out from under the crossbar and palms it away. And I also have been watching Jordan Pickford for so long. It just kind of seems like everything in my mind is now Jordan Pickford when it comes to saves.
Yeah, which is fair. Yeah, yes, I am fond of saves and whatnot and those big moments, but I'm not the best. You're probably looking at the notes and saying, wow, Quinn, I watched a video. A lot of it comes from a video, obviously.
It's okay.
But I think in general, I don't even have to talk about too many in specific. I mean, obviously that Southampton one where he just like is diving backwards in the air and like scoops the ball out of the air. I mean, it's wildly athletic. It's like,
exactly.
I actually remember. Yeah, I actually like remember watching that one live. It's the only, well, not the only one, but one of the only ones that I'm like, oh, I remember actually watching that and being like, did he just save that? Like, that is crazy. So, but he's one of those goalkeepers that I always had faith that he could save the penalty if he went the right way. And so I just think of all the different penalties that he saved. Obviously, there's the ones in the FA Cup semifinal, but he saved that penalty against Liverpool back in 2011, where it's like, I don't remember who took it. See, this is where my memory's not A+, but it's like the lower, like bottom right corner, and he just, I mean, it wasn't this crazy great strike, but it was placed well, and he just looks like an athlete, and just like, dives, saves it, saved another penalty against Aston Villa in 2015, which was a good one. And then, his reactions, I think, when balls are deflected, those are other goals that I think of where, like, against Fulham back in 2012, there's one where it just, he's so quick and, like, so good at hyper-focusing on the ball where you just always think he's got a shot to save it. Obviously think that about Jordan Pickford as well. But yeah, watching Tim Howard play, sure, there's mistakes and whatnot, but yeah, in my mind, I'm like, if a shot's deflected, I think he still has a shot if humanly possible. Like, I think
humanly possible, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I was always impressed by that, of this ability to, yeah, it seems like even if he's going one way, be able to pivot and go the other way very quickly.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean,
again, it's hard to pull up specific saves. It's hard to pull up a lot of specific moments with Tim Howard, because one, there's so many, and two, a lot of times when you look at a goalkeeper's job, it kind of gets lost. He's a goalkeeper for 90% of the game. You know, if it's a fairly even game, they're not doing much other than kicking the ball out for goal kicks. But it's those moments where they're making saves, those moments where they're keeping you in a game, that are so important. And when I think back to Tim Howard, I can't, like, I've only watched Everton thoroughly, like, on every game of the season for probably maybe like 10 years now. Probably starts with Moyes last season when I ended up going over for the first time. But before that, it was kind of, a little sporadic, a little off and on in terms of when I was able to all watch and how much attention I was actually paying to it. Excuse me. Gosh, man, the bodily functions today are crazy. But it was just, again, it's really hard to put into words for Tim. Like, a lot of, like, it really hurts me to see so many other Americans, or not other Americans, other Evertonians, jump on his back with the mistakes and kind of, run him a little ragged with a bit of the discourse that goes around Tim Howard and there's a lot of reference to, like, star jump. There's only one instance where I can think of with Tim where he did that and it was an issue, and it was against Newcastle at home and Moyes last season. It was a 2-2 draw. Demba Ba scored twice. I think all 4 goals came in the first half. And yeah, there was a moment where he's thinking that Demba Ba is going to chip him, and the guy he does a start, he does a jump to try to grab it, and the guy picks him out and rolls it right under him. And yeah, it's not a good look, but this is maybe a wider problem with Evertonians. We're so reactive sometimes. We're so, like, and that comes because we're a club that hasn't had a lot of success. We haven't won a trophy in a long time. We're desperate to win something. We're desperate to be a part of this sport and be a major part of it again, because so many of our fans have seen us be a major part of the sport and be a major force and be a team that can go on and win things, And yet we have this issue now where when things just go a little bit wrong, we focus on that negative so much, and we allow that negative to almost consume us to the point where we don't see the context of the situation anymore. And this is like this, I can even relate this back to therapy for me, because I go to therapy because it's a good thing to go for, and just, it's a part of my life that I need right now. And focusing on negatives is always going to beget more negatives. And this is a little off topic. It's a little bit of a tangent, but we can only talk about Tim Howard so much. And there's something that I just want to get off my chest. And I want to rile some people up with this, but we as Evertonians, we really need to just take a step back and breathe. Just take a step back and focus and look at the big picture and be like, gosh, there's more to this moment. Yes, it's so frustrating to watch Dwight McNeil do his shuffle and only go onto his left foot. Yes, it's so frustrating to watch Onana barely run around the pitch. And yes, there are real things we should be upset about, for sure. But the real focus for us should just be on being better, on just focusing on positives, on trying to find a way to bring those positives to the forefront. We've not had a lot of positives for a while, but when it comes to Tim Howard, when it comes to the current players we have at the club, just focusing on the positives and what good things they bring to us and how we can make those good things something that we can remember fondly or something that we can use now. Like, it's a real frustration for me when it comes to how we look at players in the past and how we're looking at players now at the club, and just how fans in general act around each other. I don't know if you feel the same way, Quinn.
Well, I said it last week. I said we're super hard to please. Like Evertonians overall are hard to please, it feels like. And I think a lot of that is on the same vein of what you're saying. I mean, another example is, think about how many people wanted John Stones out of the club. I think the difference between John Stones and Tim Howard too, obviously there are different levels. Yeah, same with Rom. It's like Tim didn't have this like long career after he left Everton, whereas you can look at John Stones, obviously his career at Man City and with England, but people were so ready to get him out of the club. I mean, reaming him for mistakes. And yes, sure, he did. He had a mistake or two in him a game, and they were typically at poor moments. Totally. But he was really talented, and people didn't like that he wanted to play out of the back and whatnot, but he was really good at his job. And he was young and he was learning. Sure, it's not a like for like comparison with Tim Howard, but now you look at John Stones and you don't think as much about all of those things, But we were so quick. People were so quick to say, like, get this guy out. And I was like, man, I'm not ready to lose John Stones. Obviously, it was a good move for him and whatnot. But
yeah, he wanted the move. Yeah, it was good for him.
Yeah. And Tim, at the end of his career at Everton, was on the way out. And it is a bummer when people look and say, like, what is the phrase? You throw the bath out with the bathwater. It's like, oh, it's old, and it's like we got to get rid of it all. And it's like, he's getting older. He's played. He's been great for us. Like overall, like he's been great in his time at Everton Football Club, and towards the end, it started to drop. Yeah, and so I agree with you. It always frustrates me, this negativity, and something that it's a hill that I die on, and I know that it irritates people. We bring up Dwight McNeil and even moments of Tim Howard's career. Like, these people are human. Like, they also have a life outside of football. And so, like Dwight with his girlfriend or his partner, like, and all the health stuff that she's going through that, like, we don't even know the extent of other than it comes out. It's like he's got all this stuff going on at home, and he's got to show up to work. And sure, we have to show up to work too, but it's so different. It's so different of people jumping on their backs. And Tim Howard talks about in his book where he like goes to roll the ball and kind of miss, like, they're just normal men. They are. As frustrating as it is to watch them. Sometimes it's like they are human. And so Tim Howard talks in his book about this moment where he goes to roll the ball out in a match to Leighton Baines, drops it, like, and someone scores, and how people were on his back. Well, the day before is when his wife was like, I want to get a divorce. And he talks about how, like, 2 days later after being reamed, he goes into David Moyes' office, like, before training, and was like, just straight up tells him what's going on, and David Moyes' reaction and other people's reactions. But like, people just don't, and he's like, nobody had any idea. So, but there's other things going on. And so that's something that always gets me, is I'm like, these people are human. You have no idea. I think that started in college, being an athlete at Michigan State, and you've got the basketball and football team that are like, just listening to like a normal student or person or old man who's like drunk at a game, reaming this kid. I'm like, they're a kid. Like, he dropped the pass. It's a kid. I don't know. And it's okay to be frustrated with like us not winning things and us not moving forward. But, that can get me going, is when people start reaming like the person and their character. I'm like, ooh. Anyway, that's a big tangent. But that is
no, you're right. You just made me think of something in terms of what you're talking about, of reaming the person, right? Of the fact that they have other things going on and being quick to jump on their back. This whole season, we have been so frustrated and so concerned, and none of us are saying that you can't sit there and criticize the players. You can't criticize them. You can't say anything about them. They're people. They perform worse when you criticize them. Yeah, they probably do. When we boo them, they probably perform worse. They lose that confidence. It's shown at Goodison. Goodison was a really toxic place, and still it can get to that point where it's really toxic. If we're not performing well, you think earlier in the season when we're losing to Wolves or we're losing to Fulham, you think when we lost to Watford and Josh King scored a hat trick, Goodison became a very toxic place. Like it can become very toxic. Nobody is saying you cannot support the team how you want to support them. That's not what we're saying. And far be it from me to tell somebody who's like my good friends who travel home and away. They go to every preseason game. They go to Australia. They go to Africa. They go to the US. You know, when we're in Europe, they go on a bus from Liverpool to Switzerland to watch us play young boys, you know? There is a real following at Everton. There's a real lifeblood to Everton and our fans.
Yep.
And they are this club's greatest asset, us included as Americans, but the fans are the club's greatest asset. And the fans are, yes, the performances, the teams have done enough, but the fans have carried this club for a number of years now. So yes, I can understand why the frustrations. It's almost like we kind of own these players to an extent, and we're watching them not perform for us. Yes, I understand that a lot of what goes into football, especially in the UK, is an escape. It is escapism. You're trying to get away from what might be a really tough life that you live. And unfortunately for a lot of people in the UK, they live a tough life. It's a very tough country to live in right now. I know I'd love to move there, but it's very tough to just be a normal person and live there. Food prices go crazy. Your political parties don't seem to care about you very much. Your cities look like crap and aren't getting well taken care of. You know, your communities are totally different from what you grew up in. Yes, the country is really tough to be in. But at the end of the day, we have to take a step back, as we've just said, and realize that if we continue to berate players, we don't grow. We don't bring players to us. We have to find a chance for us to all grow together and to be able to give ourselves room to make mistakes. Yes, it seems like we're going to lose our club. Yes, these mistakes could end in relegation. You're right. I get it. We all get it. But we all get it. That's the point. And you just sit there and harp on about the same things over and over and over. You're going to exist in an echo chamber of negativity, and you're never going to get out of it. And it's going to be so much harder to find the positives in everything in your life, not just at Everton, but in everything, because you're living in that echo chamber of negativity. And that's what Twitter can be sometimes, is this echo chamber of negativity. It's really tough if you're chronically online. And Evertonians in person and Evertonians online are fairly different people, but they're also really similar, because the echoes of rumblings of discontent on Twitter typically make their way into the away fans. They typically make their way into the paddock, into the main stand, into the Gladys, into the park end. You know, it comes out, because when you get into Goodison, it's a hive mind mentality. You know, if 39,000 people are sitting there singing a song, there's not going to be one person who's like, I'm going to sing something else. So it's hive mind. You're going to be doing the same thing as everybody else. Oh man, yeah. I mean, we
don't need to preach too much, but yeah, I'm obviously passionate about this. Of like, you can comment on their footballing ability, you can comment on mistakes, but that doesn't have anything to do with their character and them as a human. It's just like
they care, and they care.
Yes,
they care about this club, and that's been a big point this season, is that a lot of people have come out and said, well, these players don't care. They don't show, because of these bad performances that we've had, this long winless streak that we have. These players don't care. Do they really care? Asking the question, do they really care? And you see Deitch, and you see McNeil, and you see Dom, and all these players come out and say, yeah, we care. Of course we care. Like, this is us. None of us want to be the player that goes down with Everton. None of them want to be that.
No.
And that's not just pride for the club. That's personal pride for them as well. They don't want to be that player. That will stain them. Yep. Their career will be totally changed forever if that happens.
Preach it. Yes, they totally do care. And I would say the last thing I would say about, like, you were talking about Goodison and the fans and everything, and like, I know I said last week I was there in March when we lost 3-1 to West Ham, and I was in Liverpool for a few days after that, and I got dinner with Danny, one of our mutual friends, after him and his family. And when we were headed to dinner, I remember telling him and Demi, I was like, I love the fact that I don't live here for the sole purpose of all I heard Liverpool was how awful it was, and I'm like, it's actually a gift to not listen to the next, like, the next day in America. Like, I can turn off Twitter. I don't have to go on Twitter the next day if I don't want to. Whereas, walking around, Liverpool won. Everyone is just talking about how poor it was, how awful players are, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you said, the negativity is just like this cloud that as you continue to feed it, it's crazy. Anyway.
Danny said that same point to me about the fact that he's really jealous of the fact that we can detach from Everton so easily. And for him, it's just surrounds him. It surrounds his life. And I when he says that, I'm like, oh, but Danny, like, I still feel it all the time. But he's like, yeah, you still feel it, but I'm sitting here living it. I'm like, okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah,
you got me there.
Yeah, it is so interesting. Yeah, it's hard to compare it to like American sports. I would say hockey. I would say American hockey is one of those few sports where people, if you're in a hockey market, I know you're a Carolina Hurricanes fan, but growing up in Detroit, where you're like right on the border of Canada and hockey, and the Wings were doing really well, like that was the closest thing. It's not the same, but it's the closest thing to like just the people of the original 6 hockey teams. And in Canada, I would say live and die by their hockey team. But
respect that.
Not in the same vein, but as close.
Tribalism.
Anyway,
we're gonna have an episode where we talk about tribalism in British soccer, because I could probably write a research paper about it. I love it so much. I love the community-oriented aspects of football clubs and how they are their towns. And it's like we'll quote the Sunderland Till I Die documentary. There's so much we could talk about that. That's for another day. We're going to move on to our Q&As because we've got quite a bit to talk about with that. And it's really nice. I really, really enjoy the engagement and when y'all ask us questions. Because I just like to sound smart and answer questions. And if I don't sound smart, then at least I get to hear the sound of my own voice. And that's great too.
That got
me. So we're going to start off with our good friend Irving Koeman, who has continued to take time to talk with us, his Dutch national team duties. And he asked us, who is one player we've always wanted Everton to sign but never did?
Forrest, who you got? I talked about this. I know we talked about this before.
We talked about it a little bit before. For me, and I'll continue in an American vein with it, was Landon Donovan. I know he had 2 loan stints with the club, but for me, he was the player that I really wanted us to sign permanently. And for me, it's one thing, before Everton, to see him do well at Everton, to see Everton do well with him, but it was also just to see his personal legacy, because Donovan was like the first soccer player I really was introduced to that was like a superstar that was an American, right? He was the star boy. Him and Dempsey were the 2 guys, but Donovan was like the real star boy because he played in MLS. So he was the one who got talked about all the time. Dempsey almost got glossed over because he played in the UK. It was kind of weird. But that was because MLS is trying to push their product so much, really, really trying to push their product back then, as they are now, but in a different way. They were just trying to get people to freaking go to games back then.
Seriously.
Yeah, but Donovan was a big one for me, though, like the one that got away really. It was really special to get to watch him play in an Everton shirt, because he is such an icon of U.S. soccer. And I just wish that he was somebody that MLS would have let us sign permanently. They knew that if they lost Donovan, that they were going to lose everything they had in the league. They were going to lose every stake, because nobody was going to go watch those games or even really get talked about on ESPN, on SportsCenter, and the U.S. media. What you think, Quinn?
Yeah, when Forrest brought up Landon before the show, I would say that he's one that I also would have loved to see, but not my answer. My answer is probably a little less realistic, but mine would be Marco Reus. I think why, and he's obviously a talking point as he'll be leaving Dortmund at the end of the season this year, like they've decided. It's the end of his time there, but he's been there for so long. One of 2 or 3 players from one of 2, I think it's just him and Hummels, who are left from the 2013 Champions League final. But not only as a player, I think he was a phenomenal player in his prime, still a good player, obviously on the tail end of his career, but I so respected his loyalty to the club, like to Dortmund, as so many players came in and out, and he was talented enough to go out, whether it was the handful of players who signed for Bayern or went elsewhere. Like he could have done that, and he stayed, and I always respected that. Loved watching him play. So not in this mindset of, oh, we were ever linked with Marco Reus and we could have signed Marco Reus, but he's just a player that over the years I really enjoyed watching. I enjoyed his game and always respected his decision to stick it out and be a Dortmund ultimately legend now that he's on his way out. But so that's my answer.
It's going to win the Champions League too. Look at them. They got to the final. So. That's cool.
I know. It was wild. It. Oh my gosh. PSG. That was a tough.
Oh, I could not believe they're sitting there. They're getting Mbappe down the line. This is off topic. Getting Mbappe down the line. They've got all this space to cross in. They're like, I'm just going to dink it into the middle. Just these horrible little crosses just into a literal yellow wall. And it's like, man, put that on the back post, stand it up to the freaking top of the box, and just
yes, Luis Enrique today at the end of the game, I won't go on a big rant, but says because they hit the post 6 times in the 2 games, football is just an unfair sport. And I'm like, it's unlucky, but I'm like, not unfair. I was like, Dortmund played great football. I hate that storyline of oh, PSG just didn't perform, so that's why. It's like, no way. Anyway, whatever. That's another.
All good. All right. Next question is from Cedric Sterling. He actually has 2. We'll go with the first one. And then we'll get to the second one because we're going to answer both because we're really fair here. We need to sell 2 of our best players or allow us to sign 5 quality additions in the summer. Which 2 are you selling and why? And what player would you like to sign to replace? Man, this is a really tough one because there's not 2 players I want to sell. There's 1 player I really wouldn't mind us to sell. That would be Amadou Onana. I have no issues getting him sold. I think when you look at players who really do and don't care, I think after that Chelsea 6-0, he got took off at halftime for a good reason because he did not perform at all. And after that game ended, there was quite a few there was some comments made about with Deitch saying telling the boys if you want to be a part of this, you need to be a part of this. If not, you don't. And he did not start it. He hasn't started another game since then. I think that speaks volumes about Onana's attitude towards Everton and towards this situation that he's found himself in. It's frustrating because I don't want to say I want to see a player go, but he would be the easiest one for me to let go of. And as far as the second player, if I'm thinking realistically, it will be Jared Branthwaite. It's going to hurt really, really bad. It's going to hurt probably just as much as Richarlison because what we have in Branthwaite is a player with so much potential who really deserves to have another 2 to 4 years here at the club to develop. He hasn't gotten a cap yet for England, but he's got called up for the national team. He probably deserves to be called up for the Euros. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But he's a player who has had his breakout season and really should be playing here for another year to continue his breakout season because he's going to go to a club. I really hope he doesn't go to Manchester United because I'm so afraid that'll ruin his career. And I would love to just see him go to Real Madrid. And if I am talking about a player, another player I wouldn't mind selling. I don't know, Pickford. I don't even want to sell Jordan. I know that's a tough one. I don't know who else. I don't want to sell Dom. No, and there's not really another player in the squad that has any real value. Maybe Patterson,
big value,
I guess.
Not big value. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Nathan Patterson. But other than that, I don't know. And then as far as who we'd signed to replace, in midfield, I was sitting here looking through just some of the squads of teams around us in the league. I think the big one for me would be somebody like Gibbs White would be awesome to sign, and he's kind of what we need is an attacking midfielder. But if Forrest say up, I can't imagine we'd be even in the position to spend the amount of money we need to be able to sign him. So it's hard for me to sit here and think of a replacement because of the way this summer is probably going to look for us of free transfers and loans. Quinn, what do you think?
Yeah. Similarly, was hard for me to think of people we'd sign. In terms of selling, Onana is, I think, the one money move that I'd be comfortable with him moving on. Mm-hmm. I think he's a good player. I actually do. I think he's a good player, and when he's on, he can change a game, and I think he's very talented. But hasn't really delivered that in many moments, but I think he can do it. It's one of those moments where, I mean, you see games where, like the Liverpool game, where there's the whole team on the field where it's like, I know you're all capable of that. I know you're all capable of that.
Yes.
And so there have been moments, I think, here and there in the season where you've seen little glimpses of like what he is capable of, which is why I think there's money on the table to sell him.
Yep.
And so, yeah, but I would be comfortable with him going. I would be very sad to see Jared Branthwaite go this summer as well.
Yeah.
And but I would sell Jared over Jordan. I would keep Jordan, even though he's not as old. I think Jordan is, and so many people have said this. That's okay. You can disagree.
I think you got to keep young assets, but that's
I do too, but I think it will be, part of my reasoning is I think it will be harder to keep Jared than it will be Jordan. And
sure,
so,
of course, yeah, I agree.
And I think about all the save. I mean, yes, it's hard when you start actually breaking down like Jordan and Jared's seasons. Like they are what have kept us, and Tarky. I mean, James Tarkowski and Jared's partnership, I think, has been phenomenal.
Just what we've needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, all that to say, I think the club will sell Jordan before Jordan will ask to leave. I think he's comfortable. He wants, like, he's comfortable where he's at. He's comfortable with the club.
Yeah. All the media around him has been the legacy at Everton is what's most important to him. He's still England's number one there.
Yep.
He's getting everything he wants. He's, getting paid what he wants. His family's happy and taken care of. He's happy and taken care of. Yep. And we really looked after him in a really difficult part of his career after that whole Van Dijk incident. And we invested in Jordan, so Jordan is investing back in us with his performances. Yep. So yes, I say Jordan because I really am loath to see Branthwaite leave. It's same. Because he is such a top talent, and what we're going to get for him now is not what he's going to be worth. Because in 3 years time, playing with us, playing under a manager like Deitch, where he's going to have all the opportunities to continue to improve his positioning and continue to improve his physical play and his performances. Yeah. I mean, he's a £100 million player for the English premium, for his age, for his position, where England really, they have John Stones and they need a partner for him.
Yep.
He is the partner. He's the future partner for John Stones, and then whoever decides to come up after that. Yeah. Is there anybody you'd sign to replace Branthwaite or Onana you can think of off the top of your head?
It's a tough one for me. There's not someone who jumps out when I think about who we need to sign or what. My thought is like, can we figure out the Dele Alli situation? Like, can we just, even for, if it's just to see for a season, but can we figure this out of how can we get out of this contract so we don't have to pay and he can see the field once he's fit and healthy? And maybe it doesn't work out. But I am invested enough to give him a chance if we can get out of having to pay Tottenham what that current deal is. So anyway.
Yep. Well, the second question from Cedric, a little bit easier to answer. Who's been the better loan signing, Anwar El Ghazi or Arnold Danjuma? He's actually played some games.
Obviously. And he scored a goal. I mean, that's
he scored a
goal? El Ghazi played twice. I think he had 2 appearances. Yeah, that's a question that I'm like.
Wild signing. Hey, we like Cedric. We're not going to sit here. Yeah.
Easy answer to me, though.
Yes. Yep. And then we had another question from Jacob Holton, a Cincinnati, Ohio wannabe Scouser. I'm a wannabe Scouser too, bro. No shame in it. What would we rate our season out of 10? I really thought about this one for a while because for me personally, I think this season has been a massive success for what we were expected to deal with, for what we have had to deal with. But I think the winless run takes it back a bit. I would say it's probably like a 7.5 out of 10. Stayed up before the last day, had some good performances, won in the derby. We had some really good times. So that winless one was really tough, and it showed a lot of flaws in the squad that we have now, and how hard it's going to be next year in terms of what money we're going to have to spend, how we're going to build a squad. But 7.5 out of 10, I think, is really fair for me.
I also thought a decent amount about it, and I'm going with the Dave Portnoy rating system, where you give a 6.8 is my rating. And I would say similar of that winless run in the middle really brought it down, where I'm like 7 feels too good of a number and 6 feels too small. But I think that at the beginning of the season, if you'd have said we would have been safe, forget the points deduction. I also feel like the points deduction, it impacts games. It impacts morale of the team. When the second one came, it's like, so who knows what the season would have been without all of the PSR, points deduction, Premier League drama, whatever. Like that stuff does affect people. It affects their mindsets. There were moments of triumph, obviously, beating Liverpool, always like a huge win.
Oh my gosh.
Also, the fact that Jordan Pickford was even in the race for the Golden Glove until Friday.
Well, how good our defense was.
Amazing. Amazing. But our inability to score goals really is a tough one for me. I mean, Dom was in and out of the squad with injury, but
we just don't have a lot of attacking players, really.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
So, I would say 6.8. I think there were moments where players really stepped up, where it was awesome. There were wins across the season, like you said. Our back line and Jordan Pickford were amazing. The fact that we can't score a goal, the fact that, like, the club as a whole, we can score goals. We're scoring more goals, but we couldn't score a goal for a long time.
Only need to score one if you're not conceding. Come on now.
It's true. Well, yeah. Well, the 14-game winless run is a huge loss for the season. That's a huge. That's why I can't give it. Well, I can't give it a 7.
All right.
There's my answer.
Fun. Okay. Next question is going to bring up some contention. Drum roll, please. Ross Barkley is a free agent in the summer, and Luton are looking like they're going down. Would you sign him? Quinn, you first.
Me first. I don't feel super passionately about my answer or an answer. I would say my answer is sure. Like sure. If all things work out. I know. I mean, it's more of a, would I sign him? Ultimately, if everything aligned, yes, I would sign him. Am I super passionate about get Ross Barkley back in the squad? No. I think, obviously, the move away was hard. It was a hard break, hard for supporters on how it all ended up. His time at Chelsea didn't really work. Didn't work out. Tough to see. It's been a positive to watch him at Luton with Rob Edwards, who believes in him, gives him a spot, and it's worked out, and he stepped up, and you see moments of talent that he has that I would say most people who support Everton, watching him grow up, you would think that he has it. It just obviously didn't come to fruition a certain season. I think he's matured a lot in even being able to step up and deliver for Luton after such a poor spell for him in what you would argue is his like prime years of it dropping, like his mid-20s. But I don't know if Ross Barkley would come back to us. Like, it's hard for me to be in the mindset that Ross would sign for us again. So that's where I'm like, sure, if everything aligned, I think he could be good for the squad. But I'm under the impression of like, I don't think he would agree to come back. So it's a hard one for me to really see happening.
I think there's two ways you can look at it. If you look at it from purely footballing of what the team needs, yes, it's a no-brainer. I think he is what we're missing in midfield. It's somebody who can pass the ball more than 10 yards. Because you look at some of the balls he played against us. It's not like we did a good job of being on top of him, of smothering him, of making sure he couldn't play as many. But when he did, getting those balls out wide is something we need, and we leave it to Tarkowski to try to spread these balls out and to try to get these balls out to our wingers in spaces where they can create. And we need somebody in midfield who can do that a little bit farther up and get those passes into space. I think he would be a good addition in that regard, especially on maybe just like a 1 or 2 year deal. But if you're looking at it from a point of real life, I don't think he'd be super excited to sign. I think that he knows that he would deal with a lot of stick. And yes, he has matured a lot. I don't know if he's the kind of person who would come out and feel like he needs to apologize to the fans, which is maybe something the fans would have to have, like a large majority of our fan base would have to have for this, for this to be a move that is something that's viable. I would be happy to see him come back. I wouldn't boo him. That's just because I wouldn't boo most players who are Everton fans and Everton players. I think where we're looking at with how we're going to be signing players this summer, I think it's also kind of fits into the profile of the player we're going to be looking for. Out of contract, not going to be on crazy wages. English, because Sean Dyche just loves his English players, man.
He sure does.
We're gonna have a full 11 of English players next season. You just wait. Like it's one way or the other. It's gonna happen. But I do like it's tough, but I do think he's somebody we should at least look at and sound out and see what happens. And we as supporters are just gonna have to deal with it if it happens, and just find a way to accept it and give the guy some grace. And give the guy the opportunity to make up for what was, you're right, was a really bad exit. He let it drag on. There was probably a lot of his agent doing it too.
Yeah,
saying,
I wouldn't say it's all him by any means. I'm not like, wow,
right.
It's all on Ross. No way. Exactly. There's so much that goes into that. But
yeah. Well, so we'll see what happens. We have another question here from Swift Clips, star emoji. I love the name. Do we reckon we should start Trimity? I said
Yusuf. You said you were going to say Yusuf.
I can't. Yusuf versus Sheffield United. Yes, I think we should start Yusuf versus Sheffield United. Get that guy some minutes. We're safe. Get him out against a team that's going to be a little down on their luck and feeling hard done by. And go out there and get the guy the opportunity to get his first Everton goal. Of course. Let him play in a 4-4-2 and a 4-4-2 with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And let's just see what happens and just enjoy, the penultimate last game at Goodison. Because next season, there's going to be something else. So they better give us the last day of the season at Goodison next year. I tell you what, if they make us go to Arsenal again, I'm going to be so mad.
3 in a row. That would be tough.
It's ridiculous. How to start with Arsenal away next season. That's
yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in June when the fixtures come out.
Do you think he should start?
Yeah, I think I talked about that earlier when we were talking about the Leeds. The Leeds game was that I would love to see him up front with Dom. And why not start? Why not get 60 minutes of the two of them up there? Heck yeah, 60, 70, who knows?
Leeds?
Against not Leeds, sorry, Luton. That's on me. Against Luton this past week.
Wow. That was something
that's
else.
On me.
Makes me feel a lot better about my use.
It's late.
It's okay.
Hey.
Well, listen. we only have one more question, it looks like. So don't worry. We've gone on a little bit farther than we thought we really would. So but this last question is actually really cool. And is one that I'm not going to talk too much about because I really want to talk a lot about it. But we're gonna have an episode about this. GVL Goals says, what's the most interesting experience you've had with tribalism in the UK? I went over in December for the first time, visited Millwall and Everton. You visited Millwall? You're a brave man. And was so blown away. I'm also fascinated by it. That is a great question. I have one particular instance that I can hone in on in the midst of a lot of experiences I've had with Everton. I went to an Anfield derby. It was one we lost 1-0 in 96 minutes. Par for the course for Everton, whatever. But I was at the Brick before the game. The Brick is kind of like a hard man's pub for Evertonians. It's an Everton pub, so you don't go there if you're Liverpool. And I actually ended up staying in a hostel right around the corner from the Brick. So I spent a lot of time at the Brick last April. And got to know the landlord there and stuff. But walking up from that match to Anfield was such an experience because you are flanked by police horses, right? You're flanked by police horses. And as you get closer to Anfield, you start getting closer to the Liverpool pubs. And as you get closer to the Liverpool pubs, these Liverpool fans are outside and they're staring at you. And the police forces come and they kind of form a little bit of a barrier so that nobody tries to go at each other. But eventually something happens. What happens is somebody throws a beer bottle from the Liverpool pub into the Everton fans, and then it just kicks off. It just kicks. I mean, these guys are going at each other. You got a police officer like going and pushing somebody against a fence. Like there's police horses running into people. You're like, how are people not getting trampled right now? It's just chaos. It's chaos. And in the midst of all that chaos is this young American guy. And you know what's funny? There's a facet of this story. I had gone and bought a 6-pack of Heineken because I don't know, I couldn't get into the pub because it was packed. And then I didn't have a way to open them for a bottle opener, and I wasn't, smart enough to use my teeth or something. So I went and bought like a bottle opener, right? From the corner shop that I bought the Heinekens at. And then I had that in my pocket, and we're walking to the stadium, and all of a sudden like, oh, I have this bottle opener in my pocket, so they might think this is a weapon. So I have to take it out of my pocket and just throw it through the railings into Stanley Park real quick and hope that no like cop or somebody saw me do that and thought because I probably would have been, you get to the turnstiles, they pat you down really well. You walk through the metal detector. If I had that on me, there's every chance they might have deported me. They might not have deported me, but they might have deported me thinking I was trying to bring like a deadly weapon into Anfield for this derby, like this American kid. It's just,
yeah,
it's something else. There's a lot that I could really get into with that, but I do want to have this really specific episode on that because it's such a fascinating subject, and I'm really glad that you're fascinated by it too, GBL, because it's just so unique. Quinn, what you got?
Yeah, I think of a lot of little moments, and then could go into stories. I think about the first time we went, and my dad wore a red jacket into the Zocek household, and Steve made him stand outside.
Oh.
Just like those moments of my dad not having no idea. Anyway, that's a friend of ours.
That is incredible.
I know it's not totally like it is in the UK, like it happened in the UK, but it was the Everton had you split game, the Europa League game that had to have. I mean, it was paused for I don't know 3 minutes, but it kicked off in the park end and the away end. Started throwing bottles and like stopped the game and held them in the stadium after the game. And same with them, like the Hajduk Split fans, all the Croatians coming from Liverpool Lime Street. There were just so many police officers. Like, I went to the game with a friend, and we went to Nando's before the game, and Liverpool won, then walked, and just all the cops and all the trouble that happened during the game and them having to stay and be held. So that was a wild moment of where you actually see it stop a game. Like you see it, but it's like, oh, they're like actually throwing things at each other over there, and it's to the point that like, it's like some of the fans
gonna get hurt over there
in the away end were trying to like get out and get over, and so
it's crazy.
Just one of those moments where you're like, oh yeah,
it's like children and women over there that you're trying to get at. Like, oh, come on, guys! Like, who do you think you are right now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
David, you are right. Just be normal, and you're good at Goodison. I agree. But what is normal? The first match I was going to go to, I had this really good idea, and I went and I bought a blue morph suit, and I thought I'm going to wear this to the match. Thank God.
Oh my gosh, Forrest! I didn't know you were going to do that. I didn't know.
I didn't do it. But it was in my mind. I'm this 19-year-old thinking, I'm going to get on TV. I'm going to look so cool. I would have gotten thrown out of Goodison. They would have been like,
praise the Lord for your food poisoning.
Damn straight. Damn straight.
Yes.
One more question from Patrick. How much should we pay for Lukaku Barkley reunion? Look, I had a clip of me running around my parents' front yard with a flare when we signed Lukaku permanently. I would pay a lot of money to have Lukaku back. Barkley, whatever, 40,000 a week. Lukaku, sign him up. I'll put the kitty together. Let's go. Transfer fund. I got it. I'll put the GoFundMe down. We probably need like 20 million to get him from where is he still at Chelsea? Chelsea.
Chelsea. He's been gone from Chelsea for a while. He's in Italy.
Yeah, but is he on loan in Italy?
No, I don't think so.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think he's
regardless, I $38 million release clause.
Well, you better get that GoFundMe going, Forrest.
Hey, Patrick, you're a stats guy now. I got it.
He is still on there.
Oh, yeah, 10-10 for the Den and Goodison on the same trip. Yeah, man, you chose it. The Den, man. I remember when we went to Millwall, in the FA Cup a couple years ago and lost 3-2, not last minute. Oh, I remember that. Wow, that was awful. Yes, the Millwall is known for their hooligans. They're known for their ultras. They're known for picking fights, and Everton are known for picking fights and winning them. They don't shy away. I think when it comes and we're both lucky enough to know somebody who, I say lucky enough. We both know people who are involved in the hooligan scene with Everton, which is not that big these days. It's not as prevalent as it used to be in the 80s. But Everton kick everybody's butt everywhere they go. They do not lose. Even they go to Croatia, they do not lose. We should only take Lukaku back if he grows his dreads out again. I don't want to get into the dreads conspiracy theory. I liked him with his dreads because he was a young guy. He lost those dreads, and it's like he matured and decided, yeah,
I'm gonna grow up.
I'm not gonna do quite as much as you thought I was gonna do. That's okay. I still love the guy. He's one of my favorite players. He's obviously our best ever Premier League striker. I hope Dominic Calvert-Lewin takes that title from him. Because Dom will probably be here a lot longer than Rom was. Dom and Rom. Oh, that just came to me. Could I get a shirt made with that? Andre Gomez.
I get a shirt.
One last question. Andre Gomez, I would keep, but only if he takes a significant wage cut, which I don't think he will.
Yep.
He's and I think he'll go to somewhere like Saudi Arabia or the MLS. Maybe he'll sign for another Premier League club, but regardless. That's what we've got today, y'all. We have run a little bit over, so we want to make sure that our good friend who's going to be editing this doesn't have too much to do. But we really, really, really appreciate all the interaction today. It's been really nice. We love the interaction. We want to be able to answer all your questions. We want to bring more Evertonians, more American Evertonians into the fold when it comes to Gomez to Ipswich. Look, he's going to go become best friends with the singer, Ginger. What's his name?
Ed Sheeran. Andre Gomez being buddies.
Best friends. I mean, Gomez looks like he could be like a bassist for Ed Sheeran or something. It's kind of wild. But yeah, so we keep the interaction up. Please bring those questions to us. We'll figure out what we're going to talk to. They would be on the cover of Vogue. They would too, right? Gomez is significantly better looking than them, though, so I don't think he would let him overshadow him that much. But please continue with the interactions. Please follow us on Twitter. I can't say I tweet that much when Everton aren't playing. I tend to lurk more than anything, which is not a great word to use, but I'm going to use it anyways. I tend to observe. There's the word. And then I'll as we continue to grow this podcast, grow this live show, we're going to start bringing some guests on and really get this up and going. But thank you all for joining us tonight. And the podcast it really has. Seriously, thank you, because I was not feeling great. It did not feel super prepared coming into this, and I'm glad that we were able to get an hour and 13 minutes material out of it. So thank you all very much. We will see you soon. And again, follow us on Twitter and talk to us. We got plenty to talk about. And have a good night. See y'all later.
Until next time.
The Toffees. Up the Toffees. Everton. All right, I got in the stream now.